Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Literary Ladies. My name's Melanie,
And I'm KP.
and we are going to be talking about The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins today. And I don't know about you, KP, but I loved this book. I think I read it in like 2.5 days.
Yeah, you read it so fast. I read it a lot faster than I usually read books. Sometimes it takes me like a week or two to get through one, but this one was super quick.
It
So,
flew by compared to our last one because that one took like quite a long time to read and or for me listen to since I'm an Audible queen. But yeah, this one went by super fast and for good reason because I really liked it. So as a little synopsis of this book, by the way, there will be spoilers. So if you haven't read it and you want to, probably pause this and come back at a later date after you've read it. But for a little synopsis, it's basically it gets to other point of views, but it starts off in the point of view of this woman named Jane. And she grew up in the foster care system, and you kind of hear a little bit about her life being weird and kind of like she ran away from something, but she's pretty poor and just walks dogs in this neighborhood that's like super fancy, like $1 million homes, and ends up almost getting hit by this man named Eddie. And they kind of hit it off and start this relationship, and come to find out his wife is missing and her best friend was murdered. And yeah, it's just a big mystery thriller, plot twists at the end. We'll get into all of that, but definitely
yeah.
check it out because it was good.
And I do have a funny story to start, but it was not funny in the moment. So I already told you about this, but my mom reads like religiously. Like every book I go to her and I'm like, "Oh, I'm about to read this." She's like, "Oh, I read that like 12 years ago." And I'm like, "Okay, great." And so she reads a lot. And so I went to her and I said, "Did you read this book yet?" And she goes, "Oh, isn't that the book about the guy who keeps his wife in the attic in like a
Ah,
lock room?" And I was like, I don't know. I literally just started it. So,
oh no. Luckily, that
so
wasn't like the big plot twist of
yeah,
it. So that's good. I'm glad you didn't give away like the actual ending.
I know. I was like, this is like, you're like the type of person that goes to the movies and you've already seen the movie and you're like, oh, the guy dies at the end.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, because it gets into like B's point of view, but it starts like right after the accident and stuff happens. So you don't know like is she still alive currently until the end, and it gets more and more further along in the book. So
right.
we've got some questions. I want to talk about all the theories I had throughout the book because I had a lot. But we will dive into question number one, which is which character did you connect with most? And how did your opinion of that character and the others change throughout the course of the book?
So I can't say I like connected with any of the characters because they were all like kind of crazy town.
Uh-huh.
But I liked Jane's storyline the most, obviously, because it was like the most mysterious. You didn't know why she was in this town, what her backstory was. I
Yeah.
liked the storyline with John, her roommate, because I
Mhm.
thought that that was like the gift that kept on giving. Like you thought he was gone, and then he would come back, and then he would say like, "Oh, I need more money for my church," and that I thought that was like such an interesting dynamic. But yeah, I thought that she was the most interesting to read throughout the book,
Mhm.
her perspective.
Yeah, John was such a sleazeball. I did not like him. I did not appreciate him doing that and being like, hey, my church needs some money. And like he uses it for himself, and the church never got any speakers. And I thought it was freaking hilarious that she donated the money to the church at the end. And then they were going to like announce that they had donated it for the rest of forever
Yeah.
at every service after that. I thought that was so funny.
Yeah.
Um, so this is funny because you know who I put I connected with most was Emily, except for at the end of the book, she kind of treated Jane like a jerk when she like offered to have her stay, but then started making her do errands and stuff. That was not cool. But yeah, I liked Jane in the beginning. I didn't like when she started trying to like assimilate into this rich girl clique and tried to be like all the other women. That kind of made me not like her as much, but I definitely liked her in the beginning because she's like this scrappy little woman who, you know, she like ran away from something but you're not sure what. And yeah, she definitely had an interesting story, that's for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, and to kind of go back to when she went to the church and she did that, I was like, you are such a badass. Like, you're going in there saying, I already called Phoenix, I already cleared my name. They're never going to call you again. They're never going to call me again. And by the way, I'm donating to your church and you have to
Yeah.
hear my name the rest of your life. I was like, oh, this is great.
Yeah, this connection that you have with the private investigator, yeah, he thinks you're like a creep who's stalking me.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was
that
really
was
cool.
genius.
Yep.
All right, next questions. The characters were strongly affectedly their childhood. What? Whoever wrote these questions was not me. Okay, these characters were strongly affected by their childhood experiences. How
Mhm.
did those experiences affect their adult choices, both negatively and positively?
I like this question because I really started to think about it because I didn't really like think like, oh, their childhoods were so important until I like saw this question. So I was thinking with Eddie. So he started off from like not a super um, wealthy family. And so then he started to go after women and use them for their money and just like bouncing around from woman to woman. But that kind of stopped with Jane. But so that's kind of like negative going into a positive. And then Jane, because of her kind of going around to all the different foster homes, like she didn't trust anyone. You could see that when she got into the relationship with Eddie. I mean, lo and behold, he had a reason not to be trusted, but she kind of had her guard up from the beginning and was even, she would like lie to people because she
Hmm.
didn't want them to know who she really was, even though her and Eddie were kind of similar in that way because he kind of wrote off his family and she didn't want anyone to find her either. So, yeah,
Yeah.
but I can see how their childhood specifically definitely influenced them in both positive and negative ways. And then B, the only thing with her would be just her like relationship with Blanche in college, and really I think she used her, she was like codependent on her, not codependent, she was just dependent because Blanche really wasn't dependent on her, but um yeah, and I think she kind of was shell shocked when Blanche was like, well, why are you trying to go to the same college as me? And then their relationship kind of got torn apart with her copying everything that Blanche did. Oh yeah, how about you, what did you think?
So I really only focus on Jane. I think that she just wanted like someone to love her and to like show that they cared about her because she never really got that in life.
Yeah.
Um, she did have that with her foster sister, but then seeing that her foster sister died and no one really cared, I think that like put an even bigger wall up for her to be like, yeah, I'm not going to care about people because the one person I cared about ended up dying. Like she could have lived if that foster family brought her to the hospital, but they didn't.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think with B, I mean, she obviously had some resentment towards her mom and her drinking, and that's
Mhm.
why she ended up murdering her. And yeah, the whole situation with Blanche and Blanche saying, "Oh, B's copied me my whole life." That went so back and forth that I was like, I don't know who I believe. I don't know if like B actually does copy Blanche's life or if Blanche is just this like drama queen that makes up this craziness. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
I almost think that B is, I don't know the appropriate psychological term for her, but basically like from her childhood, she's been murdering people. And then it's almost like she sees Blanche as this normal woman who has like all of these achievements and she wants to mimic that. and maybe
Mhm.
she doesn't know how to do that as a normal, like, functioning person. So the only way she can is to copy exactly what she's doing, and she knows like that other people are going to like that, and that's
Yeah,
how she builds her business.
yeah. I totally think that you're right about that. I think that I mean, she got into this community that she lives, and like everyone is the same. And essentially, that's like B's dream is for everyone to be like this cookie cutter person that shops at Southern Manor, that
Hmm.
they're all the same. No one has their real like own identity. Everyone
Yeah,
just shares an identity.
yeah.
So, yeah.
um yeah, that was kind of a crazy story, just her like storyline. So the next question, the novel makes a strong case that you never really know a person. Do you believe that? Why or why not?
I mean, I think it's true to an extent. I think there's parts of everyone that we don't share with others,
Hmm.
but I don't think it's as dramatic as the book where it's like, oh, I'm actually a serial killer. You don't know that because I just haven't been caught by you yet.
Whoops.
But it feel like to an extent, yeah, everyone has the parts of them that they keep like to themselves,
Yeah.
but I don't know, not like dramatically.
Right. I kind of put something similar where I just said that I think people can sense whether someone is like inherently good or evil or bad. Um, but to go as far as to say like you never really know someone, like, yeah, of course, you don't know like someone's entire thoughts and actions and anything like that. Like, no matter if you're in a relationship with them or they're your own child or what. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I think so. I think like on the surface, you can kind of get an idea about people, but yeah, people can always surprise you.
True that. So the next question is, what do you think Eddie saw in Jane when he first met her? What were his motivations for advancing their relationship?
So I think he had spent his whole life, I kind of talked about this a little earlier, like going for these women who would help him become more prosperous in life. And then with Jane, I think he saw someone that was just complete opposite of that and everything that he knew in his life, like even in that neighborhood that he was in, just completely different from all the women. And then it was kind of funny that she tried to then be like these women who she was so different from, but I think that that was the main um draw for him when he
Hmm.
met Jane.
Yeah. I think that he like saw her kind of as like someone needing to be saved. So he kind of stepped in to be that person for her. I mean, he
Mhm.
had all this money, he had this big house. He saw where she lived and I'm sure he was like, "Oh, she lives in the shitty apartment and she's going to come move in with me and be my fiance." I don't know if he like ever actually loved her. I don't
Mhm.
know if he ever would have married her because like he did really like love B and
Mhm.
that love never went away.
Yeah.
He just didn't know what to do with her because she killed someone. She killed two people and he didn't know like how to live life like that with her.
Well, he didn't kill, did he kill two people? He didn't kill Blanche.
No, B killed two people. She
Oh
killed
yeah, yeah.
Blanche and her mom. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um Weird.
Yep.
um yeah, I don't think that I don't know. I feel like maybe he thought that he could love her. Like, I think that he was really infatuated with her, like right at the start. But yeah, I think that especially once him and B started getting closer again in that room when he would go take her things and he would even visit like when she didn't need supplies, he just would
Hmm.
like bring her more stuff. So I think that he realized, like, oh, actually, I still like this woman that I'm married to that's not dead.
That's living in my attic.
That's yeah, exactly. Okay, so it was implied that maybe Eddie and B somehow survived the fire at the end of the novel. What do you think happened?
I think that there's no way Eddie did. he was so hurt after Jane attacked him. I don't think he would have been able to get out of the house during the fire. And I don't think B would have been able to like get him out of the house.
Hmm.
I think B survived. That's my theory, that she
Okay.
made it out.
Okay. Do we know how the fire started?
No.
Okay, so here's what I think. I think they both survived because he was talking about how he's the only one who knows how to get out of this panic room. It's very dangerous the way that he had to get out. So I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, I think he's the one that caused the fire. Like that whatever he had to do must have had to do with that. I don't know what it would have been, and I wish they would have gone into more detail, but obviously they wanted to leave the ending kind of open for them. But
Hmm.
I just feel like they definitely survived, especially because when they went to tell Jane that they didn't survive, they were like, oh yeah, we just found teeth because the fire burned so
Hmm.
hot, but those were just the teeth from when she knocked them out with the pineapple, so they didn't
Hmm.
find any other bones or
Bone.
anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they definitely both survived. And I think that the fire just started because of however he had to get out.
That is such an interesting thing. So I forgot that he talked about that like secret way of getting out of the room. So do you
Mhm.
think that B got out that way as well?
I think so too, because I just feel like they would have found some of their remains. Like the
Yeah.
if the teeth were there, obviously the fire didn't burn hot enough to destroy them, so they would have found the other teeth too.
Yeah. Yeah, because like in a fire, if someone does die, you find the bones, no matter like how hot it was,
Yeah.
usually. So yeah, that is weird that they didn't find any bones and they found a bunch of teeth.
Yeah, so I'm totally on the they got out of that house and they went somewhere to be together, maybe to the lake house, who knows?
Maybe. So that kind of brings us to our next question.
Mhm.
Why do you think that Eddie changed his will to bring over to Jane?
Yeah, so I think that he knew he was going to have to do something with B soon because it had already been like a year since all of that happened, and he couldn't just keep her living there forever and Mary Jane and have nothing happen. Plus, like he said, she was getting closer to figuring it out like every day. She heard the thumping upstairs, and obviously she found that book eventually. But so I think just as like a safe way to keep the money somewhere, he just gave it to her so that B wouldn't have access to it again.
Hmm. Do you, I think that's so interesting that B was smart enough to put the book in the coat pocket, thinking that Jane would probably find it. I was
Yeah.
like, that's genius. Like, that's really freaking smart.
Yeah. It was kind of funny how she was like, oh, she wrote, I didn't realize when she was writing that she wrote over the other words.
Oh, I
Because,
didn't realize that either.
yeah, when Jane talked about reading it in the book, she was like talking about it being scribbled over top of the other, like, actual book printed
Oh,
words. I'm like, why didn't you
yeah.
just write in the margins or something?
Weird.
I know.
Psychopathic behavior.
What about you? What did you think about that?
I thought it was so confusing. I mean, it like kind of makes sense, but like the money, most of the money wasn't even his. So if B was found to be alive, that would not be Jane's money to take because it would just be the Eddie's money that he left, but most
Yeah.
of Eddie's money was B's money from her business,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think it was like stocks that she had in the business or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so this brings us to our last question on here before I get to asking about your other theories, if you had any. What are your feelings on ambiguous endings in books?
I like them because I think that it like opens everyone's creative brain up to making their own like ending to figure out, where they think the characters ended up and what actually happened.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think that this book necessarily had a super ambiguous ending, other than Eddie and B, you just wondering what happened to them. But you're like, cool, Jane now has like anything she could ever want in life. Like her life basically did a 360 in just a few months, and she got a super stellar deal with like hundreds of millions of dollars at the end.
Yeah, when she said at the end of the book that she just went to buy like a small cabin in North Carolina or South Carolina, one of the Carolinas, I
Mhm.
was like, really? You have like hundreds of millions of dollars and like you're just, but I guess like you do you, Jane. But like, I just think it's funny that she still decided to like live simply, even though she could go like live an extravagant life if she wanted to.
Yeah. You know what I just remembered that I wanted to mention when you brought up the death of the real Jane, which was her friend in the foster care system.
Hmm.
The foster dad was like, I forget exactly what he said when she like begged them to take her to the hospital, but he was like, she'll be fine or blah, 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 something like that. And I wanted her to say that to him so bad when he was having his heart attack. I wanted her to be like,
Hmm.
you'll be fine. But instead, she was just like, die. But I wanted her to repeat exactly what he had said to that girl. I thought that would have just been like a mwah, chef's kiss moment.
Yeah, I think that would have been great. One of the death moments that I found very disturbing was when B pushed her mom down the stairs and then just left her there overnight, but her mom was not dead. So she was just like slowly bleeding out all night and still alive. I was picturing that and I was like, oh my God, like that is the most disturbing thing
Right.
I've
So
ever heard.
this girl is definitely like got some stuff going on.
Yeah. And like you can go to sleep that night, like you can sleep fine knowing your mom's at the bottom of the stairs, like
Yeah.
partially alive.
No. So I want to know, did you have any other like theories or suspicions while you were reading the book? Because I had two different ones, I think.
Not really. So
Okay.
let's dive into what you had.
So the when I first texted you saying that I like thought that I knew what was going on, I thought that I still assumed that Eddie was the killer, but I thought that the reason that he was bringing Jane into his life was to put the blame onto her. Because you
Ooh.
know when like people start dating someone like soon after their wife dies, you're like, oh, like, is there a reason? Like, did they kill the
Mm,
wife so that they could inherit her like life insurance? And did they plan this out together? So
oh,
and I don't necessarily think that that was going to be the case. I just think that he was going to use her to pin it on her somehow. So that was like my
mm,
first suspicion. The second, I actually realized that B was the one that did it because it was around the time when they started saying that Trip was actually at the um, lake house. When they
okay.
said like, oh, he was there, I was like, okay, yeah, it was definitely her because she brought him there to try and blame it on him.
Mhm.
Yep.
Like they drugged him. Well, they didn't. She drugged him,
Yeah.
and she even said in the book like Eddie royally fucked up her plan. Like she was gonna blame it on Trip. She was gonna go on living her life
Yep.
and all that, and like it all is so like interesting how this author put so many like little details. Like had Trip not called Eddie, like Eddie would not know that he was going there, so then Eddie wouldn't go there, and it just like just went from there.
Yep. It was good. Okay, so let's move on to our casting process.
Woo. Should we start least important to important?
Sorry,
So
it
let's
just
start.
froze for a second.
Oh,
Who do you want to start with?
let's start with Trip.
Okay. So for Trip, I put Jake McDorman.
I don't think I know who that
If you
is.
watch the show Greek, you will know who he is.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. I can see him as Trip. We both had like a very similar image of what Trip would look like in our heads.
Okay, who did you pick?
Because I put Bradley Cooper.
Oh yeah.
So it was like we both kind of picked like kind of like a rugged looking guy who could look like homeless most of the time.
Yeah, I could totally see that.
Yeah.
Okay, so then let's do Blanche next.
I picked Margot Robbie.
That's so funny. I picked Margot Robbie for B, and I picked Scarlett Johansson for Blanche.
Interesting. Okay. I
Yeah,
could see both.
that's so funny.
That is funny. Yeah, I was trying to figure out like who to pick for what people.
Yeah,
Like I was trying to figure out in my head what age range they were. Like I figured the guys were older
yeah.
and then the women would be like in their 30s.
Mhm.
So, okay, so you picked Margot Robbie for B, right?
Yes.
Okay. So for B, I picked Leighton Meester from
Oh
Gossip
my, this
Girl.
is so funny. I picked Leighton Meester for someone else.
Stop! You
I
picked her
put
for Jane?
I put her for Jane.
Oh my gosh.
That's
So
wild.
that is wild. What? What? This is weird. So for Jane, I picked Shailene Woodley.
Oh, I love her. That's a good
Me
pick.
too.
Yeah.
She already has kind of like done a role like this in Big Little Lies, where she
Uh-huh.
kind of needs to like fit in with this like upscale community. So I was like, I don't know, but she did
Yeah.
that part really well. All right, drum roll, Eddie.
I picked Ed Westwick
Love him.
because
Love
then
him.
it would go with Leighton Meester and we could have
Duh.
Chuck and Blair again.
And he could be such a bad guy. He was a bad guy for all of Gossip Girl. So
Mhm.
I can see it.
Yeah.
I picked Jake Gyllenhaal.
Okay. Yeah, that
Yeah,
totally, I can see that too.
yeah.
Yeah. The reason I picked Margot Robbie and Scarlett Johansson is because they're both blonde. And I was like, okay, B would totally like dye her hair blonde if she was
Mhm.
like trying to be exactly like Blanche. And then Margot Robbie kind of looked like someone who could play someone that would murder her best friend. So
Totally.
that's why I picked her. But that's funny with that we had two. They were a little bit off, but I'm still gonna call that a win for us because
It is a win.
yeah. So I already saw your rating on Goodreads, but let
Yes.
everyone know what you would give this book out of 5 stars.
I rated it a 4 out of 5.
Wow, 4 out of 5. Okay, I gave it 5 out of 5 because I loved it. I thought it was stellar.
Love that for you.
Love that for me. So definitely would recommend. How about you? Would you recommend it with your 4 out of 5 over there?
I would recommend it. I think it was very suspenseful. You like didn't know what was going on. I always like books that have so many different perspectives because
Hmm.
I like seeing how everyone thinks. Yeah, I would definitely recommend it to
Yeah.
a friend.
I like you said, things being suspenseful. It makes you want to just continue listening. You're like, oh, what's gonna happen next?
Yeah, like yesterday I had 50% of the book done and I finished the book today by 5 o'clock. And I
Exactly.
worked today. So
Oh.
I did a lot of reading and some work.
Wow, you read so fast on your lunch break.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next book that we are going to do is Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed. And this has been on our want to read list for quite a while. So I'm excited to read it. I'll let you know the little synopsis I had written beside it. Just kidding, I deleted it. But basically, an African American woman is a babysitter, or yeah, I think she's watching a child and then gets accused of stealing the child. So it's going to be a good one. Another like mystery thriller. So that's exciting. Did you expect anything else from us?
Plus it's like a little bit of like social issues mixed
Mhm.
in,
Oh
which
yeah, for sure.
I love that. I love
Yep.
to stay woke. I love to, I like reading and being knowledgeable about social issues, especially in 2021.
Mhm.
So, you know.
Yeah. It's nice when the worlds can combine and you can get a little bit of both.
Hmm. For sure.
So if you want to keep up to date with us, follow us on Instagram at Literary Ladies Pod. You can email us at literaryladiespod@gmail.com. Give us your book suggestions, book recommendations. Come laugh at our funny memes, and we will see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.